Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another parking lot review with me, Rob, and my co-host, Mr. Jim Chaboyko.
Sorry, was I supposed to say, there's a snow place like Tim's. I don't get it.
Anyway, folks, Jim and I just checked out of The Fabelmans by a young phenom named Steven Spielberg. Anyway, this young auteur, made a little flick starring Paul Dano, Michelle Williams, and who is the young man?
Gabrielle Labelle.
Say that again.
Gabrielle Labelle.
Anyway, Mr. LaBelle, Ms. Williams, and Mr. Dano are kind of the core of the story. Oh, and there's another Canadian.
Which one?
Seth Rogen.
Oh, yes, Seth Rogen, of course. Yeah.
Anyway, Seth Rogen's in it as well.
Judd Hirsch is in Canadian. Nor is David Lynch.
Anyway, folks, we're going to talk about The Fabelmans, which just came out of, which I will not say, although it had a 2.5-hour runtime, I would not say it had too much story. But first, Jim, why don't you give us your first thoughts? Give us your spoiler-free thoughts.
Well, I'm not sure to make my sight and sound list of all time, but for this year, it was a pretty good one. It's basically it's a half domestic dramedy and half about the sort of the things that people go through when they become a storyteller, and the sacrifices and what it means and that kind of thing. I thought it was a big full movie. It was pretty subtle for Spielberg, I want to say. I'll have to think about that because he's not always the most subtle guy, but lots going on. That's how I forgot about our Vancouver buddy, Seth Rogen. He was like the first half of the movie. But there's it's a pretty full movie. I'd like to sleep on this one too, in addition. But it's very interesting. What did you think about it?
You know what, Jim? I think it's half like artist's Bildungsroman. It is. One of the main things is, about this young man. It is semi-autobiographical. You're really seeing Spielberg's artistic take on how he became an artist. It is also, though, a really heartfelt and I think subtle view of a 50s, 60s marriage. And, I can only say it will make my list. I think it'll make my list for my top movies of what we covered this year. But I know I can 100% say this. Every superlative that they give Michelle Williams and her performances is you see it here. It was really, at least, and we do need a couple of days to sleep on it, but right now all I'm thinking is like, okay, that's why
She's the go-to.
Yeah. You're almost like, well, somebody had to, sooner or later, somebody was going to replace Meryl Streep. And I think Ms. Williams could be that next, the great one.
Yeah. It's funny, on paper, of course, nobody would say this. It's like, roll Spielberg's mom. Well, that should be okay. That should be easy, but she's playing I got the sense throughout the whole thing is that she wasn't just playing a woman and a woman who's in a bit of internal crisis, but she's got a face on, right? She's got, forever when she's on the screen, it's almost like there's two people up there. There's the person, the interior person, and the person she presents as. And that's a pretty tricky way to go. And Paul Dano is pretty great too. He's the straight man.
Absolutely.
and he's typically the the kind of the kooky guy, but he's the straight guy, and he does a great job. I mean, they make a great pair. No, it's quite a role, yeah.
And I think Seth Rogen also did a great job playing a role. You know what? And he is the funny guy in that first half of the movie, but never so funny, never chewing up scenery, never taking over a scene.
Yeah.
And I think that's a testament to the players and of course the filmmaker. If somebody's going to pull in an actor, I think Spielberg, and say, I need a little less. It's going to work. But anyway, folks, you know what? I'm already want to talk more about this movie, Jim, but we are talking about it on Sunday night, and we will be doing it live. So, notwithstanding my car deciding that it has to rev up all of a sudden, maybe that's really our hint. So, Sunday night, Jim.
Sunday night.
We'll reconvene 9:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. Coordinated Universal Time -6 for those international followers. Anyway, anything else?
Great turns by Judd Hirsch and David Lynch. And I wanted to say, and there's a little, there's a bunch of, maybe I'll save it for Sunday. There's a bunch of Easter eggs in this about old movies, especially towards the end. And maybe I'll develop that a little more on Sunday. But almost see how they run out a few Easter eggs about British film. This one in the final act has tons of real neat Easter eggs. So that's the fun part of it.
And even a couple in there from his own, like Spielberg's own work. All right. Well, anyway, I think that's about it. Good night, everybody.